Hello, my name is Ben Friedman, and welcome back to this series where we cover all things Oscars and specifically their odds and chances. This series is specifically covering, of course, the Oscars coming up in the near future for the films of 2022 for the ceremony that will happen in 2023. Today, on this show, we are talking about the Best Original Screenplay race, which is a pretty packed year. There's going to be a few hard cuts from this. There are going to be some surprises, and there's still some films that have not been seen by anyone yet, so it's going to be hard to navigate this. For those who do not know how I do this, I have broken this up into 7 categories. I grade them out of 0 to 5 on a scale, and from there on, I will then rate it. I put it into Excel. It is all numbers based, and it's basically me predicting the odds based on some parameters that I have established. The parameters are always changing. There's some that I like sometimes, and some that I don't like, or some that need to be adjusted per category, or some that just straight up didn't make sense and it was overinflating one movie and putting another below it where it shouldn't have been. So it's always an adjusting timescale. And of course, with this, the big thing that will always change as well is just straight up the fact that some of these movies get seen. There are some movies that a few weeks ago I had not seen, and I was running on based on Venice receptions, specifically Blonde, which I had actually cracking my Best Adapted Screenplay. Boy, what a miss I had there. There's stuff like that where you don't exactly know how it's going to pan out until you see the movie, and there's a few movies that I have now seen on this list, and when I cover the next few weeks, in October, I'll be able to see a handful of these. I know for a fact on this list alone, I should be able to see Decision to Leave. I'll be able to see Tar. I'll be able to see Till. And I'll be able to see a few others, I think. I think I have a few screenings coming up in the next 2 or 3 weeks for Oscar films. I know The Fable Men is right around the corner. I'd assume The Whale has to be coming out pretty soon, beginning of November. So a bunch of these movies are going to start premiering, which means I'm not going to be talking about them blindly as I am right now, which makes sometimes predictions very hard to do. When you're predicting something and you're just going by word of mouth, by people that you trust, by the early reviews, by rumors, all of that, and it really makes for stuff. But for those who do not know, the Oscars is not always about choosing the best project that wins. Sometimes it is a campaign. Sometimes it is, are they deserving of the award? Sometimes it has some political motivations at others. Sometimes it is heavily influenced by producers. Like I said, sometimes it's just a straight up campaign. It is a popularity contest. Is this person deserving of an award versus this other person? Is it their time? That all factors in. Are they a Hollywood sweetheart who's never been awarded? Or of course they have to be rewarded for this. This all comes into play. It is not just a straight up, because it's art. How do you critique art? You don't. It's so subjective that you can't really talk about it in a fair way. So I'm really trying to bring an objective narrative to this. Just see, like, these are the things that typically are the trends within Oscars. These are the chances given these parameters that I have set out. It is completely meaningless, and yet I still think it's actually a pretty interesting deep dive into these movies. So without further ado, let's start it. And for those who are visual watchers on this channel, you will notice that I have a PowerPoint that I'm going along with. For my audio listeners, I do apologize, but you can always check out the video on apologies, on YouTube. And for the audio listeners, I'll make sure to talk and explain everything. That way you're not missing anything if you're just listening via audio. So let's start with the film that has the lowest chance. And I should mention there are 19 films that are being discussed today. There could be a few others that maybe haven't crept in to my awareness yet. There always seems to be 1 or 2 films that we just aren't aware of until like November or December that end up getting a nomination. There's always a few foreign films that I am not familiar with at this point. I tried my best to accomplish it. I also did a deep dive, and we'll talk about that, into the other pundits who are predicting these awards and which films they have and whether I disagree or agree with their takes. So let's just start with the film that has the least amount of chance. This is a film that I think people were really saying early on in the year this could be a major chance frontrunner for Best Original Screenplay. The film came out, there's a lot of controversy before, and the film has been pretty widely hated, even though I thought it was okay. I didn't hate this film. but it is definitely not Oscar material. It is not a film that will have any impact. You will not see it nominated. It got a 2 on my scale, and that is the film Amsterdam. All right, so let's talk about this film a little bit. So Amsterdam, for those who do not know it, and I apologize, I'm going to do it like this to make it a little bit easier for us to view. Amsterdam is directed by David O. Russell. This is a guy who has made films before in his career, such as most recently Joy, I believe, was his last film in 2015, which I think actually got nominated as well. But he had American Hustle in 2013 and Silver Linings Playbook in 2012 back to back. He did films like The Fighter in 2010. He's been working forever. He's Three Kings was 1999. 2002, I think, was I Heart Huckabee. He's been a big name. He's always had big actors in his films. I mean, in this one alone, you can see Christian Bale, Margot Robbie, John David Washington, Chris Rock, Anya Taylor-Joy, Zoe Saldana, Mike Myers, Michael Shannon, Timothy Olyphant, Taylor Swift's in this film, Robert De Niro, Rami Malek. All these guys are in this film. And ultimately, there's a few things that are factoring against this movie. And one of the biggest things is the movie's just plainly just not that good. Like I said, I enjoyed it enough, but it's definitely not like a great film. So let's just talk about this. So I broke this down into 7 categories. The first one being noisiness of the film. Basically, how I define noisiness of the film is how's it being received by the general public? And in this case, the film is not being received well. Sorry, as I charge my computer, I'm going to yell a little bit to make sure. But yes, this film is not being received very well. This film bombed. I believe it had like something like an $80 million budget, and it's grossed like $9 million on its opening weekend. This film is being laughed at. There's scenes from the film being clipped out of context on Twitter. People are making fun of this. This film has no chance in that respect. So noisiness of film, 0. Well-respected figure within the industry, despite some of the controversy that's been around David O. Russell, which I already talked about in my review, but some of the, if you're curious about that, I believe it's the Read the GQ, or actually it's Read the Vulture article that they did about the basically years of abuse of David O. Russell and some of the controversies and allegations made towards him. Regardless, look at this cast. He's a well-respected figure within the industry. He's been nominated and I think maybe won a few times. So he has that as a 4. So that's helping his score out. Genre, this is a 3. It's a period piece. It's a pseudo-romance, pseudo-comedy, pseudo-murder mystery, pseudo-drama. So I kind of just put it at a 3. Period piece, true story about... The next category I have is period piece / true story / Hollywood / autobiographical. These are always films that tend to get attention from the Academy. In this case, this film both fits as a period piece. It is a true story. So that put this film at a 5. So you see the 4, the 3, and the 5 are helping the film. Modern day parallels. Basically, modern day parallels is, can you look at this film and it's trying to say something about the current society that we live in 2022? This film is trying to say something about fascism. Now, whether that message actually fully works, that is up for debate. The answer is probably no, but this film does try to do that. So I did give it a 3 for that. This is where the scores get a little weird, and I never give zeros, but in this case, it had to be zeros. Word of mouth on this film, it's dead on arrival, it's a 0. Narrative, it's a 0. There is no one who wants to see David O. Russell nominated. There's no one who wants to see him nominated for this film. And campaigning, this film was a huge bomb. This film's not being received well. If this film was being received well, but it didn't make the money, you would maybe see the studio going out of their way to campaign for this film, this is Searchlight's Pictures, but they're not, and Searchlight has other films that they are more interested in bringing to the forelight. They have more films that they'd rather basically spend their money campaigning for. David O. Russell's Amsterdam is a 2, and it's not going to get nominated, so that's my 19th pick. Coming in also at 2, which this film has a better chance, but it's a film that I don't think is going to be seen popularly. This is from a very controversial director and writer. If I may, just check out his Facebook posts. They are quite the thing of legend. This is Paul Schrader, the guy who wrote the film Taxi Driver. He's done a few films. This is kind of like his pseudo trilogy with the card counter from, I believe it was last year, and First Reformed. This film is called Master Gardener, and it stars Joel Egerton, Sigourney Weaver, and this film follows, and god damn, this premise is something. Narvel Roth, the meticulous Narvel Roth, who is a guy who works with plants. He has a beautiful estate owned by wealthy. God, I can't pronounce any of these words. This basically what this film is from my understanding. Joel Egerton's character plays basically a Nazi in hiding, I believe, is my understanding of the film. At the very least, there is definitely ties to fascism in this movie. This is a film not about that, but it is basically a very complicated figure, as are all Paul Schrader characters dating back from the 1970s. There are people where Paul Schrader's films are for them, me included. Listen, this is a total nerd movie, nerd pick. It's not going to get nominated. This is being released by production studios by the name of Kojo Studios. It had its release at Venice. I don't think it's even been picked up by a distributor yet. There's just no chance. Noisiness of the film, it's at a 1. It didn't even get like a great reception. I think it got like a good to lukewarm reception. Well-respected figure within the industry. Paul Schrader is loved within this industry, despite how controversial he can be. Genre, it's a 2. Period piece, true story. Story about Hollywood, autobiographical. I put it at a 2 because I guess it's technically a period piece. Modern day parallels. It's always hard to go for a movie about Nazis in hiding and the complications of being a Nazi in hiding. Narrative, it's a 2. Paul Schrader was always going to have a positive fan base and people who are going to support him and people who are going to just love his types of movies. So he does have that, and I don't know how many times Schrader has won the Best Screenplay Award. And campaigning, it's a 1. I just don't see this movie being the money being spent / if it's even coming out this year. So I'm putting it at a 2. Maybe this film gets a huge resurgence. Maybe people love this film when it gets more widely seen. I'm kind of not betting on it, and I don't even know if it gets out this year. Coming in next at a 2.25 is what it's averaged, and I'm really sad about this because I really enjoyed this film. This came out to Apple TV earlier this year. This is a film called Cha Cha Real Smooth. This was the big film out of Sundance. This is written, directed, and starring Cooper Raiff, co-starring Dakota Johnson. This film was big out of Sundance, but it is not going to have Dakota love. I mean, we're in October. We're nearing the end of October at this point, and for this film to have even been really in the conversation, it needs to be in like that. It needs to be in the conversation. And this film is quite honestly not in the conversation for films right now. There are other films that are being pushed. There are other films that are being talked about. It feels like this film is going to go by the wayside. So noisiness of the film, that's why it's at a 2. Well-respected figure within the industry. Cooper Raiff has made another previous film called Shithouse, which was, again, well-respected, but again, they're both smaller films. This one is definitely made Cooper Raiff probably a lot more popular on the call sheets in Hollywood, but it's still a relatively small film. It premiered at Sundance, had a fairly good reception, and a fair enough reception with Apple TV, but this is not their years. This is not their quota for this year. Genre, I think this is a film that would play to the Academy. It's a story about growing up. It's a story about love. It's a story about just family. I think that these themes work with the Academy, so I gave it a 3. Is it a period piece? Is it a true story? Is it a movie about Hollywood? Is it autobiographical? I gave it a true story and autobiographical. Even if this isn't exactly Cooper Raiff, I think you can see a lot of the inspiration that he drew into this movie, so I gave it a 3 for that. Modern day parallels, I put it at a 2 because I really didn't know what to do with this category for this. This is where it's just like, is this devaluing some categories and this is inflating other ones? The modern day parallels fits into that. But ultimately, I didn't think this film had anything that would really connect besides with the youngest audience in the Academy, which again, the younger Academy is a little bit more diverse. It is much more skewing younger, so maybe this film can connect with some younger voters, maybe get a few votes. I don't see it being anywhere near enough to push. Word of mouth, this film was at a 2. Coming out of Sundance, it was the big film, so I would have said at that point it's a 5. If this film had been big on Apple TV, I think the word of mouth with this film would be much bigger, and I think there'd be a narrative and a campaign push for that, except that it didn't. This film kind of came and went. Not a bunch of people saw it, so word of mouth, narrative, and campaigning, 2. Campaigning is the interesting one because campaigning always does come down to how much money are you willing to spend, and how much are you willing to get your stars in front of the movie to promote this movie? Apple TV has the resources. I don't think they're going to make the push this year. They have the Martin Scorsese movie coming out next year, as well as the Ridley Scott Napoleon movie coming out next year. That really feels like they are not going to be a big contender this year, except for one movie that we'll get to later that is going to be the topic of much discussion these next few weeks. But overall, Cha-Cha Real Smooth, recommend the movie. I think this movie is really good. I really found this movie I connected with me in a really emotionally powerful way. But it's still, as of right now, it's a 2.25, and it will not be getting a Best Original Screenplay based on my metric and my beliefs as well. This is an interesting movie, Decision to Leave. Sorry, God, need to get some water in my throat. Decision to Leave is written by Park Chan-wook and Seo Kyung-jong. This film is, for those who do not know Park Chan's work, he has done films like Old Boy. This film has been a much anticipated release. The noisiness of this film, it's come out. I can go see it in theaters in Sacramento. I haven't heard much people talking about it besides some really the film critics who see everything. I'm really excited to see this film. This is the South Korean pick. This premiered at some of the festivals. It got a good response. It got a strong response, but not like this Parasite response where everyone's like, this is the film. I wouldn't even say it had to drive my car response from last year. I think this film will probably be the major threat to win the foreign picture. It's hard to imagine this getting the groundwell of support to make it into the Screenplay Awards, but again, next few months could change that. Well-respected figure within the industry. I think Park Chan-wook is a very well-respected, especially with how many international voters are voting within the Academy, so I put him at a 4. Genre 4, I don't know much about the film, but it sounds like a film that could play by the Academy. Period piece, true story about Hollywood, autobiographical. From my understanding, it's none of those, so I put it at a 1. Modern day parallels, I put it at a 2. It sounds like there's at least something about culture in South Korea, how we interact with each other, how the inner politics and all that works within our lives. That sounds like that could be a 2, so I gave it that. Again, this is where these categories can kind of inflate or deflate a movie. Word of mouth, it's had a good word of mouth. I know people, I was listening to Sean Finnessy and Amanda Dobbins on The Big Picture talk about this film earlier about this week. They both had good reviews of the film. It didn't sound like they had overly enthusiastic reviews as they did with, I know, films like Drive My Car and Parasite, which is kind of what I'm comparing it, because they're all South Korean releases within the past 5 years. So word of mouth, it seems to have a good response, a strong response, but it doesn't seem to be an overly enthusiastic response, which makes me worry that this film will have trouble finding an audience on the larger stage. Narrative, I think there is a lot of love for Park Chan-wook's work, so if this film really did find that, I think that narrative is currently at a 3, it could go up. Same with campaigning. I think the campaigning is this is going to be the South Korean International Film picture submitted for best, best international film. I think that means that there's going to be, that basically means that there's going to be a country behind this film supporting it, not just one studio. There's going to be an international base that is uplifting this movie. At this point, it's a 2.75. I'll be seeing this movie in the next 2 weeks. Maybe I rate this movie a little higher. Maybe once this film becomes, because I'm seeing it at an indie theater in Sacramento, I think this film will get a little bit more of a wide theatrical release. And I believe it's coming out to, I want to say it's Netflix in maybe early 2023. So there's a chance this film could go up. But at this point, it's at a 2.75, and I don't really see that being the case. This film is also at a 2.75, and I'll explain why this film is rated above it. This is the film Causeway, which is starring Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry. This film is written by Elizabeth Sanders, Luke Goebel, and Tessa Moshva, I believe is the last name. I do apologize for butchering the name. Noisiness of the film. This film will be premiering on Apple TV in, I believe, first week of November. This film premiered at, I want to say it was TIFF. I want to say it had its world premiere at TIFF earlier in September. Noisiness of the film, I think Jennifer Lawrence and Brian Tyree Henry got the noisiness part of the film. I haven't heard, the reception that I've heard of this film is that this film is good, but the screenplay is definitely not the strongest suit of this movie. It's definitely the stars. Well-respected figure within this industry. I I couldn't find really anything like a history with these writers, so I'm going to put them at a 1. It's, again, you always do have new writers who get uh, into these categories, but usually they're more people like Jordan Peele or Kamal Nanjiani who are of some note before getting into it, or you have other people, maybe like a Todd Field, getting in for some of his earlier works. I don't see these writers being the ones who get in over some of the other competition that they will have to overcome. Genre is 4. This is a film about a soldier coming back from war with PTSD and a brain injury. That's a very Academy friendly genre, I should say. Period piece, true story, movie about Hollywood, autobiographical. I put it at 2. From my understanding, it's not a true story and it's not autobiographical, but it does speak of the soldier's experience coming home. So I think that will help get it a little bit higher there. Modern day parallels, for that reason, I also put it at a 4. Word of mouth, I already kind of explained why it's at a 2 right now. It's just straight up the issue of the word of mouth of this film is Jennifer Lawrence is great, and that's probably where the campaign will go. But outside of that, it doesn't really look like they're going to be focusing outside much of the actors. Narrative for this film, I think it's a 3. I think if this film hits, I think this film is Apple TV's best chance at probably getting nominations this year. And it's also why for campaigning, I put it at a 4. This is probably their most realistic shot of doing it. Apple TV definitely could spend the money, and I could see them making a push for this film, especially if it's well received when it comes out with audiences in a few weeks. This could be a really moving war drama film. Or this could kind of be a film like Stronger that was well received by some people who saw it, really liked it, but ultimately it was a film that really just didn't have any buzz and it didn't make any noise when going to Academy voting. That's why it's at a 2.75, but has a better chance than the previous film I talked about. Next film is at a 2.75, and the reason this one's at a 2.75 and higher is for a few reasons. I know for a fact a bunch of the publicists, not a bunch of the trades, have this film actually as a pretty clear, not front runner to win, but front runner to be nominated. I will talk about that later. But there's definitely some ground support for this film. Based on what I've heard about this film, Triangle Sadness, which is written and directed by Ruben Östlund, who did the film from a few years ago. I believe it's 2017, The Square. This film is a story basically about the day and age that we live in, the social media setting that we live in, influencer culture. This film is supposed to be a really dark comedy. Noisiness of the film, it's definitely picking up. I was talking about this film a few weeks ago when I was talking about Woody Harrelson's chances of being nominated, and I just said I hadn't heard any buzz about this movie. Film's getting a little bit more buzz. There's some pretty strong reception for this film. I'm putting it at a 3. Well-respected figure within the industry. I think Ruben Östlund is the case of a guy coming up, and if this film hits, this chew could easily go to like a 4 or 3 or 4 pretty easily. Genre, it's currently at a 2. This just, based on the poster, and I didn't have this poster on there, but there is apparently a scene where a lot of the characters throw up, and that's one of the posters on it. Just does not seem like an Academy-friendly movie in that sense. But I mean, some of the dark comedy, social satire does seem a little bit more Academy-friendly, so I put it at a 2 for that reason. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood / autobiographical, it's at a 1. Modern day parallels, though, it does jump up because it is a story about our times. It is a story about 2022. I gave this a 5. Word of mouth, same kind of with noisiness of film. Word of mouth is at a 3. I'm hearing good with some tepid reviews for Triangle Sadness. Some people say the film kind of falls apart. It is 2.5 hours, which just sounds a little too long for this movie. I could see this film not being one that is going to be for a certain audience and it's not going to be for everyone. Narrative, though, again, this could be the case of like, if this is a dark comedy that hits and the audience really responds to it and critics respond to this largely as they seem to be doing right now, I think this narrative could jump up from a 3 to higher. And campaigning, same thing. This is Neon Pictures. They know how to really to campaign. They're not like the biggest studio. They're not the biggest threat. They haven't had like a ton of Oscar success before, though. I believe did they release Parasite? I don't think they released Parasite. Regardless, I put them at a 3. Again, a few of these numbers could jump up. This film will get its wide release on October 28th, and we could see it jump up. Currently, it is at a 2.75. With, again, a lot of the pundits predicting this movie could make it into the field. I'm currently betting against that, and I'll give my reasons a little bit later, especially when we start getting into the top 6 or 7. Next one, I wish this one had a higher chance. I really did. This film is Bros, which is directed by Nicholas Stoller and is written by Nicholas Stoller and Billy Eichner. This is a romantic comedy about 2 gay guys in New York who both have commitment issues. Noisiness of this film. This had a rapturous release at TIFF. This was one of the big talking points. I believe it opened the festivals. It had that, and then the film did kind of bombed at the box office, which is way too bad. I really love this film. I can't recommend this film enough. So I kind of just evened it out for the critical responses, which has been very positive, versus the audience response who has not seen this movie. I put it directly in the middle at a 3. Well-respected figure within the industry. I think Nicholas Stoller boosts this film a little bit more than Eichner. I think people like Eichner, but people are still unaware of him, and I think his comedy is probably too abrasive for some Academy voters. And also, let's be honest, right now, there is a section of the Academy voters that is older and more conservative who's not going to go for a film like Bros, especially with the subject matter that it talks about and some of the gay love that we see in this movie. This is just not going to be in their senses. That will help that there is a younger audience within the Academy now who I think will embrace these ideas, and I'm hoping that they will counteract some of the more conservative, older Clint Eastwoods of the Academy. But so currently it's at a 1. Period piece. Well respected within the industry. It was a genre, was a 1. If romantic comedies don't typically get nominated, they have to be a really big deal to get nominated. Like Bridesmaid was like one of the biggest films of that year. That was an Apatow and what is his name? Paul Feig movie. I'm mispronouncing his name, but whatever. That was a huge film of that year. Big Sick was a big deal film. They do occasionally get nominated, but a true just romantic comedy, it's pretty rare. So I don't think the genre is particularly fitting. I mean, I think When Harry Met Sally did get one, and you do have occasionally some, but a lot of them, like even the romantic ones that do get in, like Eternal Sunshine, that's definitely a lot more heavy-handed on the drama. It's not as funny as this movie is. Why is Alexa talking to me right now when I'm recording? Bad Alexa. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood / autobiographical. This isn't based on Billy Eichner's life, but I think it is largely, and he's talked about, it is based on his experience being a gay man in New York. So I gave that a 3. Modern day parallels. This is a film about being accepted within a community. It has great representation. I think a lot of these words and ideas and just, again, this is going to really resonate with the younger voters in the Academy. So I gave that a 5. Word of mouth, 4, because again, this reception of the film, and for people who have seen this film, it seems to be very high. Narrative, I think there's a lot of excitement if this film was to get nominated for Film Nerds. If Billy Eichner was to get it, I think this would be opening and diversifying the type of films that we typically do not see the Academy recognize. Narrative, I have it at a 4. I think there is a good narrative with that, of which I think I just accidentally repeated. Sometimes I look at the same screen and I forget. Campaigning, this is a release that, I mean, I think technically Universal could put the money to release this film. With the fact that it bombs so hard, I'm skeptical to see it, and then they're going to look at it and it's like a romantic comedy. What are the actual chances this gets nominated? It's not like Billy Eichner is like this A-list star. I just don't see them campaigning for this movie. If they did, it might have a higher chance for sure. Currently, it sits as a 3. I'm hoping this one could upset, but I'm not counting on it. Oh, God. 3.125 is the next one, which... I accidentally made a typo. I put 3.1.25. It's 3.125 is what the actual score of this film is. Emancipation. Have you guys heard of a guy named Will Smith in the past year? He won an Academy Award for Best Actor last year, and that's the last I heard of him. So let's get into this. Emancipation. This is an Apple TV release. This was the idea of Apple wanted to push one of their 3 films. This was supposed to be one of the big films for the Academies this year. This was one that a lot of people This is directed by Anthony Fuqua. This was a film that people were really feeling the passion for. There was a lot of good press on this film. They were like, okay, is Will Smith going to be back-to-back nominated / possible wins in the Academy? People were really thinking this film had a really good chance at just being nominated, having a lot of success within the Academy. There's a lot of good buzz, and then Will Smith slapped Chris Rock. And Apple TV's kind of at a loss on what to do with this movie. If you want some good reporting on it, Jeff Snyder from Above the Line, Below the Line, and the InSnyder on Twitter has talked numerously about this film, why he thinks it was a good idea for Apple TV to release it. Basically, were they going to roll over and just let the Fablemans take the award this year, or are they going to put up a fight with a category this year in Best Actor where it is really weak? In regards to its Best Original Screenplay chances, this screenplay is written by a guy named William N. College, who well-respected figure within the industry. I put it a 1 because I couldn't find anything on this guy. Noisiness of film, it's a 5. Maybe not the noisiness they'd want this film to be at 5.4, but it's going to be a big talked about release when it comes out. Genre, it's at a 4. This is a movie about a slave who escapes and joins the Union Army. It is based on a true story, so genre, it's a 4. Period piece, true story, Hollywood, autobiographical, it's a 5. Modern day parallels, I put it at a 3. This is a story that, based on some of the conversations that we're still having about race in our country, I just see this film playing really well. I think some of the just the ideas of this film I could see being, again, really good for the Academy voters. Typically, this is a film that they would nominate. Let's just be honest. This is a film that they have nominated in the past, and I could see them nominating again. And had the Will Smith thing not happen, I'd almost say this might be a sure thing with the early reviews of this film, or sorry, the early buzz / press on this film being so positive. However, word of mouth 1, narrative 1, campaigning, I have no clue how to deal with this because Apple TV definitely has the money to spend the money. Apple TV has the money to spend on a campaign. Are they going to do it for this Will Smith movie? I don't know. I really don't know. There's a part of me that just says you should just say F it and just kind of point out the hypocrisy of the Academy. Like, what are we actually doing? This is clearly, if this is as good as people are saying this film could be, if it is, they should be campaigning this film and being like, we're not going to put Will Smith in a weak Best Actor category despite giving that type of performance. We're not going to put it in Best Original Screenplay, despite the fact that could be clearly one of them. I think they could, and I also could see them being like, this is a movie that they're trying to bury, but can't just fully bury, and maybe they want to just test the waters with it. And maybe this is also just Will Smith testing the waters. It's so hard to imagine the Academy going for anything with Will Smith's name attached right now. It's currently at a 3.125, and it could drop down to probably like a 2, or maybe even like in a contender. I really have no clue what to do with this movie. I can't wait to see the reception on this movie, and I cannot wait to see the dialogue that goes around this movie. Oh, 3.25 coming in next. Coming in next, you've probably heard of this movie. It is about the king of rock and roll himself. It is Elvis, directed by Baz Luhrmann and the screenplay by Baz Luhrmann, Sam Bromwell, Craig Pierce, and Jeremy Donner. Noisiness of this film, it's a 4. Well-respected figure within the industry. Baz Luhrmann is 4. Genre 1. I was actually surprised. Musical biopics do not get nominated for screenplays. The only exception that I had found basically since, I think it was like the 1970s, was Straight Outta Compton. They get nominated for a lot of other categories. Definitely in actor, definitely in sound, definitely in technological, and even directing. They get there. Screenplay, they did not get there often. So I gave the genre a 1. Period piece / true story / story about Hollywood / autobiographical. Obvious, it's a 5. Modern day parallels. This one actually has a little bit more than I would say some of the other films have. Straight Outta Compton is largely a discussion about black neighborhoods and policing, as some of the songs from Straight Outta Compton, NWA would imply. Elvis, while maybe not as socially relevant, it definitely has a lot to talk about in the sense of when we talk about like the Britney Spears like conservatorship. The idea of basically a manager being able to take and abuse a star like that and basically corporatize a star and take out all the artistic merits of the star for profit. This is a film that is largely anti-capitalist, especially when you look at the Colonel Parker character. I can see that one playing, so I gave it a 3 there. Word of mouth, it's a 3. Again, I think what's going to happen is the word of mouth is going to be for this film, but it's going to be Austin Butler and some of the technological designs, and maybe a push for Baz Luhrmann for director, though that seems pretty unlikely given the crop this year. Narrative, I gave it a 2. Again, narrative, it's going to be all around Austin Butler. I just don't see them campaigning for this. But if they did campaign, it's Warner Brothers. They have a lot of money to spend. They would love to see Elvis get like the 11 nominations. That's a great thing for a film that's already been performing really well. So it's at a 3.25 right now. This one's an interesting film. This is Bardo, False Chronicles of a Handful of Troops. I believe I have one other film that's at a 3.375 right now. This film is written by Alejandro G. Inarritu and Nicholas Giacobone. This film, for those who do not know Inarritu's previous work, he has directed films such as Birdman and The Revenant, which I believe he wrote both of them. Noisiness of this film, it's been talked about a lot, so it's at a 4. Well-respected figure within the industry, Birdman and Revenant, I think he wins director back-to-back 2 years in a row. He's got a handful of stars. He's at a 4 for that. Genre 5, this is a social satire. This is a political movie. This is a movie about art. This is a movie about him. This is a movie about Hollywood. This is a movie about filmmaking. This is a movie about basically everything. So I gave the genre actually a 5. It's a surrealist comedy too, which always plays fairly well with the Academy. If you're going to be a comedy, you got to be surrealist for the Academy to notice you. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood / autobiographical. It is at a 4. Modern day parallels for all the reasons I said above. It's at a 5. This is where, though, the film falls apart because I'm giving it largely 4 and 5s up to this point. This is where the film will fall apart. Word of mouth on this film was bad. It premiered at Telluride. I believe it was the big opening film at Telluride, and this film did not play well with critics. This is what they called a 3-hour mess. This film did not get received well. This film is being recut by Inarritu to make it basically, I think they said like 30 to 40 minutes shorter. That's going to hurt the film. Narrative, for that same reason, that's a 1. Campaigning, Netflix has the money, and they don't have a clear film to support this year. They do not have a Power of the Dog in this year's race. So, I mean, it kind of feels like it's going to be Bardo or Glass Onion. If they really wanted to make a splash, they'd have to do it with one of those 2 films, unless White Noise comes out and shocks people. But yeah, for all those reasons, at a 3.375. Let me just say this. I saw the trailer. I was really impressed by the trailer. I like this director. I want to see this film. I'm hoping it's good. But yeah, the 3-hour runtime is long, and it's going to be hard to sit through for a lot of members. And yeah, with just the fact that the biggest argument I heard against this film was the cynicism, how cynical the filmmaker, who is a very cynical filmmaker, is. For all those reasons, it just seems like a hard sell. So it's at a 3.375, as is this film, which I think is probably more friendly for Academy voters. This also premiered at Telluride. I think same night. It was the film directed and written by Sam Mendes, who's done previous films like 1970's Skyfall and Wins for American Beauty. This is the film Empire of Light, which is kind of his homage to Cinema de Paradiso. This is his homage to art filmmaking. That's a big theme with this year with Inarritu, with Mendes, and of course Spielberg, which we'll get to later. Noisiness of the film, this film is at a 3. This got a mixed response, I think is probably the most fair. Probably positive to mixed, but definitely a mixed response. So I put the noisiness of the film at a 3. Well-respected figure within the industry. There's no doubt Sam Mendes is one of them. And genre, this is definitely plays into the Academy. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood. Ding, ding, ding. Autobiographical, this is at a 5. Modern day parallels, I put it at a 2. Word of mouth, it is a 2. Again, this film just didn't get a particularly positive word of mouth. Had this film even had like a 1917 where people were like, oh, this is a technologically achievement, I think this film has a better chance. It didn't have that. So I'm putting it at a 2. Narrative, it's at a 2. I just don't see people going for this Sam Mendes film, especially when you have another film very similar to it with the Fable Men with Spielberg. I just think 2 of these films existing in the same category. There's one that's the clear favorite in there, and it is not Empire of Light. Campaigning, I mean, I believe this is again a Searchlight Pictures film, so they could definitely put the money behind it. So I mean, there's definitely a chance that this film could get some buzz that way. Like I said, I think this is a better bet than Bardo. I just also don't see this film doing it. I just don't see this film going all the way and making all of that money. and getting all the praise and getting all the awards. I mean, like I said, it always could. I just don't see it. But yes, it is Searchlight Pictures, which I just wanted to confirm. Coming in next at a 3.65, and this could climb or this could drop heavily, is Babylon, which is written by Damien Chazelle. This is his follow-up to First Man, and probably for most audiences, this is his follow-up for La La Land. Noisiness of the film, it's at a 3. It hasn't premiered. No one's seen it. I didn't know what else to do. I didn't want to just give it a 1 because the trailer was well received. Well-respected figure within the industry. There's no doubt Chazelle is one of the biggest filmmakers currently working, and definitely up there with one of the biggest filmmakers below the age of 40. Genre, it's a 5. This is a film that does get nominated. This is a movie about excess. It is basically, it kind of looks like the Hollywood version of The Wolf of Wall Street. This is a story about Hollywood. This is just the golden age of Hollywood. It's all the genre. It's all working for this. It's Damien Chazelle. It's jazz. It's all that. The genre is 5. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood. Ding, ding, ding. Again, autobiographical, 5. Modern day parallels, I put it at a 1. Word of mouth, it's at a 2 because no one's seen it. Narrative, it's at a 3 because, again, middle, how do you judge a narrative for a film that could just be bad? Campaigning, this is Paramount. Paramount has a big year. I could definitely see Paramount trying to basically be like, not only did we have the biggest film of this year with Top Gun Maverick, we also have the Best Picture winner with Babylon. So I think they would definitely be willing to spend the money on it. So it's a 5 and it's at a 3.65. Again, this could easily jump into contenders or it could fall off if it's bad. But right now it's at a 3.65, just right outside the cusp. Coming in next, we're going to have a few of these movies that are at a 3.875. This is the lowest of them. I believe I have 4 or 5, and I'll explain them as I go along. This is the film Till, which tells the true life story about Emmett Till's mother after the lynching of her son, I believe, in the 1950s. This is written by Chinua Chukwu, Michael Riley, and Keith Botcham. This is noisiness of the film. It premiered at the New York Film Festival, and it was kind of the big film out of the New York Film Festival. I think everyone was kind of assuming She Said would be that movie, and this film was definitely the bigger of the two receptions. Noisiness of the film, it's at a 4. It's going to get its wide release, I believe, is it the 28th, or it might be the 20th. It's something like that. It's coming up within the next week or two. Noisiness of the film, so 4. Well-respected figure within the industry. I put it at a 2 because I couldn't really find much about these people. Genre, it's at a 5. This is definitely an Academy type picture. Period piece, true story about Hollywood, autobiographical for all those. It's a 5. Modern day parallels, 5. Word of mouth, 4. Because of how big the reception, though I've heard it's more main toward the actress, and this film's a little conventional. Narrative, you could definitely see this film getting, if it's really emotional, if it's really heartfelt, if people really respond to it, I think it could. And campaigning, this is a film that I just put at a 2. I'm trying to remember why I have it so low. I think the reason I had it a little bit lower was the fact that this movie is definitely going to get Danielle Deadwyler. They are actively campaigning for her to get the Best Actress nomination. But this is a film that is being released by United Artists, releasing it in the US and Universal worldwide. So I put it at a 2. They've run campaigns before. They've even run really good campaigns. I don't see this film being the one, especially with some of the more recent releases that will be coming and competing in it. And I just want to confirm one thing, which is not great airtime. Yeah, here's the reason I put it at a 2. Women Talking, which is being nominated for Best Adapted, and I currently have it as my most likely to win it, is also being released by United Artists. I think that's where the campaigning is going to go, and I think Till will get the Best Actress nomination. Campaigning, this one will get kind of sidelined for screenplay in favor of Women Talking. Maybe they try and go for a full-on campaign for all of them. I just don't see it. Coming in at 3.875, which I think has a little bit more of a chance. It has a bigger studio behind it with, I want to say the movie I'm talking about is The Woman King. I want to say this is a Sony release. Yeah, it's a Sony Pictures release. This film is written by Dana Stevens. Noisiness of the film had a really popular, well-received response. It's at a 4. Well-respected figure within the industry. I put them at a 3. Genre, it is a 4. This is a type of movie that gets nominated with it being a true story, and it's a war movie. It is it's a biographical story. It's a story about a powerful Black woman leading a rebellion. These films always typically do well, whether it's Braveheart, whether it's Gladiator. This just seems like the epic that could pick up steam. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood, autobiographical, obvious reasons 5, modern day parallels 4, word of mouth 4, narrative 3, campaigning 4. I think there's a lot of things in favor, and I think this film does have a really good chance to be in the top 5. So it's at a 3.87. Its real competition I see is this next film, which is Todd Field's Tar. This film, I will be able to see it on the... I see it on the 20th, I believe. The Tar I'm seeing on the 20th. Todd Field is a guy who's worked with Kubrick in Eyes Wide Shut. This is kind of what people are calling his homage to Kubrick. Noisiness of the film, it's been a big film. It's a 4, well-respected figure within the industry. Todd Field is that. He's at a 4. Genre, it's at a 5. It is a movie about art and the exploitation. It's also a movie that I've heard deals with, again, touchy subjects like cancel culture, about accountability, about just art and the artists and those who abuse and those who just ruin their life and the egos and all of that. It just seems like a psychological movie about art, which I think they always respond to really well, whether that's Black Swan, whether that's Kubrick. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood / autobiographical, it's at a 2. Modern day parallels, for all the reasons I just mentioned, I put it at a 4. Word of mouth 5. Narrative 4. Campaign 4. I think all those reasons are obvious. The only one I'm a little skeptical on, and even my own ranking, is campaigning might be a 3. I could see this film being really heavily... I think this film is Cate Blanchett. I think the award is hers to win this year. So I think they're going to be putting their campaign in that, and I think Todd Field probably comes next for best directors, where campaigning goes to. So campaigning for best screenplay could get fallout, but the thing is, if there's a film that is already going to get a handful of nominations and possibly a best picture, then there's a much higher chance that it just gets some of these other awards like writing. So I could see it. So it's at a 3.875, and it's looking possibly in. It's either at the 5th or 6th for me right now. This is a film that is technically lower than others, but this is the first film that I'm calling a lock. It is a film, maybe you've heard of it, is an A24 release called Everything Everywhere All at Once, which is written by the Daniels. Noisiness of the film, I don't have to say it. It's a 5. Well-respected figure within the industry. I wouldn't say the Daniels are that, so I put it at a 2. Genre, it's a 3. This is a pretty weird film that it is a little hard for me to be seeing the Academy go for a film like this. And probably 3 months ago, I said they wouldn't. But with just how much support, how much some of the films not performed as pundits have expected, I could see this one being there. It was a big financial hit. Period piece, true story movie about Hollywood, autobiographical, I put it at a 1, but modern day parallels of 5, word of mouth 5, narrative 5, campaigning 5. A24 is going to do everything they want to see this film nominated for Best Picture, Best Actress, Best Supporting Actor, possibly Best Director, Writing, Special Effects, below the lines. They want this film to basically get 12 nominations. They want this film to be a big film, and I think they're pushing for it, and I think there's enough of a fanfare for this. There's enough people who love this film. I just see it having a really good chance getting nominated, and it's my first lock for this category. I put good money, despite the fact that it's tied with a few others, and I'll explain how this breakdown works in a few seconds. I put it at a 3.875, and it's my first lock. I would bet on it. This is another film that is at a 3.875, which is also my second lock. This is Martin McDonagh's The Banshees of Inisherin. Let me get my water. Noisiness of the film, it was a 5. I believe this premiered it is, according to the poster, at Toronto and Venice, and it won awards there. Well-respected figure within the industry. Martin McDonagh definitely is, especially with the release of 3 Billboards Outside Ebbing, Missouri, which came out in 2017, which got him a lot of nominations and nearly the win for Best Picture. Genre, this is at a 3 because this sounds like a little bit too much of a dark comedy for the Academy to fully embrace. But period piece, true story, Hollywood, autobiographical, I put it at a 1 because it doesn't sound like it's any of those things. Modern day parallels, I put it at a 3. Word of mouth, and sometimes I put it at a 3 when I just don't know what to do with it, so I just let the average say the average. Word of mouth, it is at a 5. This film has had a rapturous word of mouth. People are loving this film. I think this film is going to be both well received critically and commercially and with audiences. Narrative, for that reason, 5. Campaigning, 5. I think Martin McDonagh is a pretty easy lock with The Banshees of Inisherin at a 3.875. I'm also correct. I believe it's my highest of the 3.875s. So currently I have 2 locks, Everything Everywhere All at Once and The Banshees of Inisherin. This one, shockingly enough, despite being higher than both of those 2 films I mentioned, I don't have it as a lock, but I think it has a lot of recipes for a film that will get nominated, and that is James Gray's Armageddon Time. I have this film at a 4.0. This film stars Anne Hathaway, Jeremy Strong, Jalen Webb, Banks Rapetta, and Anthony Hopkins. This film did really well at Telluride, at Venice, at TIFF. I think it even played at New York Film Festival for people. Noisiness of the film, I think about a month ago was higher. I'd say this film was at a 4, now it's at a 3. I think this film's kind of gone a little under the radar because of some of the other bigger releases, which is why it's a little nervous to me. Well-respected figure within the industry. I think James Gray is that, and he's at a 4. He's not quite like the level of the next guy who's coming up, who's a clear 5, but I think he's at a 4. Genre, this is a film about basically how society in the America 2022 came, especially as it's going to relate to the fact that there is a certain political family in this movie that has big ties to our current politics landscape now. And I think that's going to really play. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood / autobiographical. I put it at a 5. Modern day parallels for that political tie and / characters that are going to appear. I believe there's an actress who's already confirmed as playing one of these characters. I don't want to say it because I don't know if it's a spoiler. I don't know how much about it is known, so I'm not saying it. But there is a certain family in this film that people are going to be well aware of. And they're going to have some of their family in this film, and it's probably going to be a big talking point. So I have the modern day parallels at a 5. Word of mouth has been really positive on this film. Narrative is a 3 because I don't know exactly what this film is because I think it's dropping off a little bit. And campaigning, it's at a 4. Again, I think this film will get the nomination. The issue, of course, is the fact that it's going to come out really soon. And there are some other films that are coming out at the same time and people are talking about it more. So I could see it just having the issue of people just end up forgetting about this film. And it was one of those ones that was a front runner early on, but it just gets forgotten. I think Focus Features will try to campaign for that. And with everything in place, I think this has a really good chance of getting nominated. But it's not a lock because I could see this film dropping pretty heavily because this film is supposed to premiere October 28th. And there's not a lot of buzz on it. And people that would be typically campaigning for this film have kind of forgotten about this film. So I'm just curious to see how this goes. The next one is guaranteed lock, and it's probably the front runner / probably the winner for this category. Maybe it's from a little bit of an indie filmmaker. Maybe you haven't heard of him. His name is Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner. It's The Fable Men, directed by Steven Spielberg and written by Steven Spielberg and Tony Kushner, who have done a few other films maybe you've heard of. West Side Story from last year, Lincoln, Bridge of Spies. These guys have worked together for quite a long time. And there's nothing I can really say about this film. Noisiness of film, 5. Well-respected figure within the industry, it's Spielberg, 5. Genre, 5. This is a movie about him. It's basically the movie that Spielberg has been wanting to make his whole life. It's a personal movie. This is a movie about him learning about his love of filmmaking and wanting to become a director while also simultaneously having to deal with the fact that his parents are getting divorced. Genre, 5. Period piece / true story / movie about Hollywood / autobiographical. It's all of those things. It's a 5. It should honestly be a 6 because it counts as a period piece. It counts as a true story. It counts as a Hollywood movie. It counts as an autobiographical. Modern day parallels, I put it at 1 because I think I had to ding it somewhere, and I don't know how much it's going to say about the years 2022 or if it even comments on it. Word of mouth, though, 5. Narrative, 5. Campaigning, 5. It's at a 4.5. This is the front runner. This is the film to beat, and I think it's not going to be beaten. I would put money right now that not only is this the Best Picture winner, I would also say this is probably the winner for Best Adapted Screenplay, and it's at a 4.50. So those are the films that I think have the best chance getting ranked. So let me reiterate. So my top 5 are going to be The Fablemans coming at number 1, Armageddon Time, The Banshees of Inisherin, Everything Everywhere All at Once, and I would probably lean towards The Woman King over Tar, but we'll see. So right now my 5 is those films. So just to reiterate one last time for those who got confused, it is The Fablemans, Armageddon Time, Everything Everywhere All at Once, Banshees of Inisherin, and The Woman King. The Woman King, I think, is going to be, its biggest competition is going to be Till and Tar and possibly Babylon, and Armageddon Time could move up or down, but I think 3 of those films, Everything Everywhere, Banshees, and Fablemans, are locks. And if you have the chance to bet on it, I would say take the bet on Steven Spielberg this year. I think he's going for this award, and I think he's going to win it based on everything and the fact that some of these films have had a little struggle of reception. But anyway, that is the race of the best original screenplay. I will be back at you next week talking about best supporting actress and the change up that has happened now that Michelle Williams is seemingly not running in that category. Anyway, guys, I hope you like this video. If you like this video, make sure to like and subscribe to the Beniverse. And next week, or in the next few weeks, I will also be talking, updating some of my previous lists. So for instance, best adapted screenplay, I have to eat crow because I put Blonde on there and it's not getting on there. So I'll be updating some of my other races, and as we get into best director, actress, actor, and picture, I will definitely be starting to do Vegas odds on that and which ones I would say you should bet on. With that all said, guys, thank you for watching. My name is Ben Friedman. Check out the Beniverse. Make sure to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching. Take care. Bye-bye.